Welcome back to Now and Next, where we dismantle the stories behind the big headlines. And today, we're cracking open one of the most dramatic collapses in tech history: Blackberry, the brand that could have killed Apple, but instead vanished into thin air. Let's rewind to the early 2000s.
Thanks for coming.
Of course, it's been years.
Is that what I think it is?
What is that you have here?
What is this?
That's a phone that I haven't had to charge for 2 days.
What is that?
Is that a keyboard?
That's what's keeping our data safe.
And it's a speed key to all my apps. Watch. There it is.
It's Android?
Yeah, it's all Android.
That's a Blackberry. I thought.
It's a Blackberry.
Yeah, it's a Blackberry.
I used to love my Blackberry.
I still do.
The Blackberry Key 2, an icon reborn.
If you did not have a Blackberry, you weren't in the game. It wasn't just a phone, it was a symbol of power, used by world leaders, Wall Street sharks, and celebrities. Barack Obama refused to give his up even after becoming president. The nickname Crackberry wasn't a joke. People were literally addicted to it. Behind BlackBerry was Research in Motion, RIM, led by Mike Lazaridis, the tech visionary who co-founded the company, and Jim Balsley, the business mastermind. Lazaridis was a genius. He invented the first wireless data technology that worked. Balsley, on the other hand, was bold, aggressive, and not afraid to take risks. Together, they created a device that offered unmatched email encryption, physical keyboards people loved, and battery life that made iPhones look like toys. By 2008, RIM was riding high. They had 80 million users, were valued at over $80 billion, and were Canada's tech pride. Meanwhile, Apple had just entered the game with the iPhone. But even then, RIM executives laughed it off. Jim Balsley famously said, "You will never need a web browser in your phone." And Lazaridis, after watching the iPhone launch, reportedly said, "These guys are just a joke." But here's a twist. BlackBerry had already built a touchscreen phone internally before the iPhone launched. It was called the BlackBerry Electron. It never saw the light of day because executives did not believe the market wanted a screen without buttons. They had the future in their hands but chose to shelve it. Then came the iPhone in 2007 and Android shortly after. With features BlackBerry had mocked: touchscreens, multimedia apps, user-friendly interfaces. RIM scrambled and released the BlackBerry Storm, a touchscreen phone with physical click under the screen. It was a disaster. The screen lagged, the design was clunky, and early units shipped with major software bugs. Verizon, which had made a $500 million bet on the Storm, was furious. Internal chaos erupted. Engineers clashed with executives, and outdated company structure caused delays. While rivals launched weekly updates, BlackBerry was still stuck with a clunky Java-based OS that lacked app and touchscreen support, and developers hated building for it. Even worse, they rejected app culture. RIM believed apps were gimmicks, and instead of building an app store, they doubled down on BBM and email. Meanwhile, Apple launched the App Store in 2008 and changed mobile forever. Facebook, Google Maps, Angry Birds, they exploded. And BlackBerry? Still stuck in corporate arrogance. By 2011, BlackBerry's market share collapsed from 50% to less than 10%. Stock price nosedived. Over 5,000 employees were laid off. Then came a complete leadership collapse. Both Balsley and Lazaridis resigned in 2012. The new CEO, Thorsten Heinz, tried to pivot with BlackBerry 10 OS and Z10 phone. But it was already too late. They poured over $1 billion into development, but sales flopped. The Z10 phone was dead on arrival. Here's something many may not know. BlackBerry once had a secret deal in motion to sell the entire company to Lenovo, but Canadian government officials blocked it, citing national security concerns, pairing Chinese access to BlackBerry's encryption tech. That deal could have saved them, but politics stepped in. And while Apple soared, BlackBerry even tried to sue them in the late 2010s over patent issues. But it was too late. Ironically, many of the features BlackBerry patented in the early 2000s, including predictive text and secure messaging, were eventually implemented in iOS and Android. So who's to blame? Was it Jim Balsley's corporate ego? Or Mike Lazaridis' refusal to believe in consumers? not corporations, or the boardroom that ignored the rise of apps, UX, and user demand. In the end, BlackBerry did not die from one bad decision, it died from 1,000 missed moments, internal stubbornness, and failure to imagine the world beyond the keyboard. Today, BlackBerry is no longer in the phone business. It shifted to enterprise software, cybersecurity, and automotive systems. But for millions, it's a ghost of what could have been. That brand that could have challenged Apple at the top and changed smartphone history forever. Instead, it became a cautionary tale of how success can blind you and how fast the future can crush the present. After Apple shook the industry in 2007, BlackBerry rushed to build a response. Then entered the BlackBerry Storm. Launched in 2008, this was their first attempt at a touchscreen phone. But what many don't know is, the BlackBerry Storm was manufactured in China. And that decision was not just a business move, it was a survival tactic. So why China? RIM had been manufactured primarily in North America and Europe through partners like JB Circuit and Flextronics. But post iPhone, they were bleeding market share and had to move fast and cheap. Manufacturing in China via Foxconn and Compile Communications meant that they could cut costs, scale rapidly, and hit the holiday season of 2008. But this move came at a price. The Storm was rushed, Verizon needed an iPhone killer, and BlackBerry wasn't ready. The hardware had problems, and the short press screen felt weird to use, and the software was full of bugs. Internal sources revealed that multiple batches were defective, and the return rate had hit nearly 50% in some markets. And that's really massive. At its peak in June 2008, BlackBerry's RIM stock traded at 144 Canadian dollars per share, with a market cap nearing $83 billion. But by 2012, after the BlackBerry Storm and multiple failures, it had plummeted below $7, wiping out over 90% of its value. That's tens of billions gone, almost overnight in stock terms. The company was collapsing from the inside. So here's what went down. Mike Lazaridis and Jim Balsley had been co-CEOs. But having two separate CEOs made it hard to make decisions. Internal engineers warned against rushing the Storm, but marketing and executives overruled them. Layoffs hit hard. In 2011 and 12 alone, over 7,000 employees were laid off globally. Many were senior engineers. RIM burned through $2 billion in cash reserves in under 18 months. In 2013, the new CEO Thorsten Heinz made the dramatic decision to exit the consumer handset market entirely and pivot to enterprise software. This was when BlackBerry's hardware legacy officially started to die. Now here's a fun fact that barely got media attention. In 2013, the US Securities Exchange Commission, SEC, began probing RIM's financial reporting, particularly surrounding $1.25 billion in convertible bonds they issued in 2007 and 11. These were essentially debt raised on the promise of future turnaround. But that turnaround never came. Investors were blindsided, and shareholder lawsuits followed. BlackBerry was accused of overstating shipment numbers, undervaluing return phones like the Storm and Playbook, and concealing internal financial turmoil. While they weren't found guilty of fraud, they paid millions in settlements and lost major trust in the market. And here's the kicker. While BlackBerry was laying off thousands and watching its stock nosedive, executives still walked away rich. Jim Balsley received over $10 million in severance and stock options even after resigning in disgrace. And Mike was still paid as vice chair for years after stepping down. CEO Thorsten Heinz, during one of the worst years in BlackBerry history, earned a compensation package over $55 million in 2013, including bonuses and stock despite the failure of BlackBerry 10 and Z10. In late 2013, BlackBerry tried to sell itself to Fairfax Financial for $4.7 billion. That deal fell through. And here's some bonus content. And what happened to BBM, BlackBerry Messenger? Most people remember BBM as one of the crown jewels of the BlackBerry era. Long before WhatsApp or iMessage, BBM offered real-time texting, read and delivery receipts, and encryption. But here's the part rarely talked about. BBM was actually licensed to an Indonesian company, MTech, in 2016 to try and revive it as a cross-platform app. For a while, it looked like it might have a second life on Android and iOS. They even added stickers, video calls, and channels. But it couldn't compete. WhatsApp, Telegram, and Signal had already taken over. In May 2019, BBM for consumers was officially shut down. The only version that survived, BBM-E, BBM Enterprise, used by governments and corporations for its still impressive encryption. But it's now a niche product. So while the hardware and headlines faded, BBM's DNA still lives on quietly in boardrooms and government networks around the world. And for movie lovers, Blackberry is now available on Netflix, a fascinating account of the company's rise and eventual decline. And that's the untold ending of one of the tech's most legendary rides. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the tech history and business stories. And hit the bell icon so you don't miss what's coming on next.